You're listening to Were You Still Talking? So, welcome to the podcast. This one's going to be a little different. I'm actually videotaping this just as an experiment to see what it's going to be like in my final iteration, which I hope to be live on YouTube. But that's going to take a bit of planning and more resources and blah, blah, blah. So right now I got some lights set up. There's going to be a picture of it somewhere, and we can check that out. I'm back on the Perception mic for those following along wondering how I'm doing my podcast. I'm putting a little bit more of that in. I am, as I say, recording this. I have a little timer because the camera I'm using has a maximum recording of 29 minutes and 29 seconds or something like that. I don't know why. I've always thought it's very strange. But if you're listening along on the regular podcast sources, who cares? Got quite a setup here. Have my little iPad that I'm using to control the board. The board is behind me, which I'm showing people on the video. There it is. It's an X32 rack, which is a nice little compact unit. Totally unnecessary for a podcast, but I got it for drum recording. You can check out all my drum recordings on my YouTube site. So when you're on the podcast on YouTube, you can just go up to the corner where my picture is and click on that and see the other incredibly interesting videos on my site. So here I am. I'm doing a solo show. My guest today is Joel Albrecht. Hey, Joel, how you doing? Oh, pretty good. Anyway, so enough of that. I was thinking of doing a Russell Brand type rant, but when I do it in my head, it sounds so much better than I think it would come across on an actual podcast. So, a little bit about me, a little bit why it takes so long for me to do podcasts. I take a lot of time between podcasts, not because I'm trying to pace myself, but that's always good too, but because I've been having these weird problems with my head and my eyes about January, so 5 months ago. Suddenly, I got really dizzy, couldn't look at my flight simulator anymore. I do a lot of flight simulating. I was just starting to do flight simulator videos, really getting into that, just starting to. And suddenly, I got seasick when I looked at computers. I mean, really just like that, right off the bat. No warning, nothing like that. I've now been to 5 different doctors. I've had an MRI, all kinds of blood tests. Unfortunately, what I did find out is that I'm fairly healthy. There's nothing they can see wrong with me. I guess that's supposed to be good news. The hypothesis is that I got some kind of infection on my inner ear, and really the only symptoms were the ones I described. So I got this all set up yesterday, which took me a minute because I'm a one-man crew. Got this all set up, ready to go for the video podcast, and I couldn't do it. Couldn't do it at all. My head just started throbbing. If I concentrated on anything, it would just make me nuts. It just felt like my head was going to explode. It's kind of hard to explain. It feels like there's bugs crawling into my brain or something. So if there was an actual Dr. Shepard in the world, that'd be great. He could get a hold of me and tell me what's wrong. Unfortunately, if the physicians are correct, it's just going to take time. It's really hard to be patient with something like this. But anyway, so when and it's especially hard because I would really like to audition tomorrow. There's an awesome play going on at the Very Little Theater, and I'm going to have to miss it. And it's extremely unfortunate. My back is finally starting to get a little bit better so that I can do some things. Unfortunately, it's not enough better to audition for this incredible band that I just saw an audition for yesterday. One of the few local bands that have done really well. So supposedly people like personal stories. That's what I've heard. So that's part of my personal story. I won't go into the rest right now because on my next podcast, there might be a lot more of it. I I do have some, I'm not going to have to do podcasts by myself for long. I'm only doing this because I'm a little bit impatient, and the guests I have lined up won't be here until a few days from now. And the other guests that I have tentatively lined up, I haven't exactly, contacted yet. So that slows things down too. Because when I start feeling really weird, it's hard to contact people and say, hey, you want to do a podcast? When? I have no idea. Someday. Still might work. I don't know. I'll get some more people, but I do have some folks lined up. Much more exciting stuff. And also, I'm zeroing in on what the podcast is about. I know this was a question at first, and it's been a question. I'm hoping it becomes about who we really are. The world at large, the universe, consciousness. Are we the people we see walking down the street? Are we the people other people see? We really can't be, because everyone sees someone different. It's an interesting theory that I heard recently, that everyone that runs into you, or passes you on the street, or you've known for years and years and years, they all see a different person. I'm not breathing. I'm holding my breath because I'm staring at my image and it's making me nervous. Strange. Okay, I'll just imagine there's no camera. So we all see a different person for everyone we meet. So your cousins and your sister and people on the street all see someone else, which is interesting. And I thought about it and I thought, well, I'm sure that's very true. And none of us see the person that we probably think we are. And of course, day to day, I think even the person we think we are changes. So it's, and the person we really are, that's a whole nother story, a whole nother universe. Like, where do we come from? Where do we go to when we die or pass away? I've heard a lot of theories on that. I have my own beliefs on that, but I want to hear others. I don't think that life ends at death. The reason my voice is cracking a little because I've had to deal with that very recently, both for myself and for others, and seeing others who are very close to the end of life. For myself, it was only, I'd say, 2 months ago, 2.5 months ago, where I was in a very dark place, and was, I wouldn't say considering suicide, but thinking and having suicidal thoughts, and really not knowing why it was worth going on. I guess that's the only way I can put it. My back pain was severe. I could do nothing with the dizziness. The symptoms of the dizziness had me so I couldn't work. I couldn't, I mean, if I could sit home and watch TV, that would have been okay, but I couldn't really watch TV. I listened to a lot of books on tapes. I then fell into podcasts and some idiots, Joe Rogan and Kevin Smith, suggested that anyone could start a podcast. So here I am trying. What I'm noticing on this podcast is that the time goes much slower when it's just me trying to come up with things to say. I was so much better when I was just walking around the house thinking about it. Does consciousness come from the brain? That's a very interesting theory, very interesting thought. Does consciousness come from the brain? That's an idea I'd like to explore. I'd like to hear other people's thoughts on, opinions. Their science is, I don't think science knows. I think science is still trying to figure that out. I think that's one of the things neurologists are not 100% sure on. If they are sure, they think, well, of course it comes from the brain. But there's some evidence that that's not really true. And so where consciousness comes from is a big puzzle, and it opens up a lot of possibilities. The other thing I'm wanting to do with this podcast is to focus on things other than the news. I could talk about the news all day long. I could get into the angry rant world because I'm full of angry rants. It's actually so simple. That's why so many people do it. That's because another reason so many people do it is because it sells really well. Unfortunately, in today's modern media, what really sells are angry rants. And so if you have angry rants that are news related, well, that's even easier because the news is so easy to get angry about no matter which side of certain things you're on, which side of the table, so to speak. And I've been on one side of the table for a long, long time, and I'm starting to question, is it what's actually going to, change the world? Obviously, politics, which is what the news is mostly about, does have lasting influence and does change things a lot. But the kind of changes that I think need to happen in this world are not necessarily going to come from politics. I think we need some huge things to happen. There, we need a shift in consciousness. We also need a shift. If we don't have a shift in consciousness, well, we need a shift in how we do things. If the human race is going to survive, that's kind of my opinion. If the human race is not going to survive, well, that's neither here nor there. But it may still be our choice. It may not. It may be too late for that. We may be far beyond that. Death and life. Okay, I'm looking at my notes. I have a notebook. I could talk a little bit about my setup. There's a couple of lights. They're not video lights because I haven't wanted to put a huge amounts of dollars into this. And it looks like my recording, my movie recording has stopped automatically. Well, that is really strange. Why did it do that? Okay, I don't want to go back and edit. Why did it do that? That was only a couple of minutes. That was 11 minutes and 24 seconds. And I have it, is it not plugged into the wall? No, I have it plugged in, so it should not have stopped. It had plenty of room. Oh, well. Okay, this is going to be a short podcast, and I might not even put it up anywhere, but I might. So listen on. Okay. I was trying to figure out what my notes said. New apps and my resistance to using them. A lot of times I hear about a new app and I think, well, I already have an app that does that. What is it? What is the story? Why do you need that one? That's ridiculous. And it kind of harkens back to when my parents didn't think it was, wondered why we spent so much time on the phone. As preteens and teenagers, we were on the phone all the time. It was a device that plugged into the wall and was stationary, and ours had a long cord on it, so you could walk around about 20 feet of space, but that was it. We still spend a lot of time on the phone, so it is interesting that I'm still having resistance to new technology. Let me try this now. There is a list of questions that I hope to get to with guests, but if I don't get to those questions, it just means that we're having a really good conversation. So if I do get to those questions, it doesn't mean we're not having a good conversation. We still might be. It's possible. Don't get upset. It's all right. So the questions are not the questions that James Lipton asks at the end of Inside the Actor's Studio. If you're an actor, especially a young actor, you've probably never heard of James Lipton or Inside the Actor's Studio. I think most actors my age or a bit younger have. If you're an actor and you're really interested in acting, it's an amazing series to watch. You should watch every episode. Start with actors you like. He interviews actors at a place called the Actor's Studio, which is a school in New York and LA. And he interviews, I think hundreds of them over like 5 or 10 years. And he asked them a lot of questions that, if you're a fan, you care about. But he also asked them a lot about acting and what their process is and, how they do certain things, why they did this or that, how they got into acting. It's an incredibly good tool for someone like myself who is either resistant to taking acting classes or just doesn't have a lot available in his area. And the reason I'm going on without the video camera is that I don't want to go back and edit. This is really annoying. I don't know what to do about this stupid camera. So anyway, it is not the same questionnaire as James Lipton or Bernard Perdue, as James Lipton always says, or Morel Proust, who is where they got it from. But I was just going to answer some of the questions myself, or maybe talk about why I have these questions in the first place. The first one is, do you like turtles? And that comes from the fact that I love turtles. I have spent some time vacationing in Hawaii. Occasionally, we're able to do that, myself and my partner. So when I'm in Hawaii, we go snorkeling as much as possible, which isn't that much because I'm extremely pale. But we, as much as we can, and turtles just swim up to you. Sea turtles, they're very peaceful. They're, I don't know, it's just an interesting life form. So that's why I asked that question. Ever thought about doing a podcast, and what would it be about? Well, it should be obvious why I asked that question, because they're on my podcast, and, wouldn't you want to know? Social media, good or bad? That's a loaded question. The people who use it a lot might have different things to say than the people who don't use it at all. I got a really good answer from Callie. She talked about why she puts out personal stuff on there and how that helps her work through things. I've been reticent to do that. It's been very hesitant. It seems like too much to be putting out there in the world. So, but her ideas about it and her explanation was really good. It made total sense. Do you believe in luck? That's another one. I think I do. Good and bad. I don't want to take away talent, and I don't want to take away people's hard work. I think hard work and talent can lead to luck. I think that a lot of people that have done really well have had a lot of good luck, and that helps maybe soothe the blow that not everyone does well. I mean, especially if you're in a business like acting, it's a hard road, and not all of us are going to do well for one reason or another. That's the great thing about doing community theater and doing small productions and things, that you don't have to be that, you don't have to worry about that much. If you can get a part anywhere, you're still doing well. Do you listen to podcasts, and what is your favorite? I love that question. There's so compared to something like YouTube, podcasting is still very new. So it's interesting. I'm, already finding out a lot of good podcasts to listen to, way more than I can. And it's always nice to hear what people listen to, and that people listen to podcasts. I mean, it surprises me how much they're being listened to. But like I say, I mean, there's a few million podcasts, which, yes, that's a lot, especially for, someone like myself who has no name and no real way to promote it other than doing more and more and more of them. I was going to talk about that too. If I've seen some great videos lately, encouraging videos that talk about, they're actually talking about YouTube, but it totally applies to podcasting, that don't worry about numbers at first, just get more material out there. I think that's really good advice for anyone who's trying to start a venture. Just make more. And, when I have the ability to promote and the budget to do more, I will. But as it is, I'm doing episodes like this just to keep it moving, just to keep things going. Did you get any furniture lately? Why do I ask that question? Well, I don't know. You tell me. I don't know. It's interesting. Maybe they got a really nice piece of furniture. Maybe they got an antique desk or something, or an antique lamp that they want to talk about. It could just lead to more conversation. It could keep things going. Have you bought anything online? If not, what? You have? Mm-hmm. Of course you have. Have you broken any laws lately, or ever? I like that question. Technically, we've probably all broken laws lately, because when you jump in a car and drive, you probably break traffic laws that you didn't even know about, especially since they change traffic flow and traffic signage and all these things daily. It makes it difficult to keep up. So, yeah, I may have broken laws in my youth, knowingly, perhaps, possibly having to do with the GTO or other things. You ever want to blank for a living? So that is similar to the Lipton questionnaire, but yeah, and the blank will be filled in depending on the guest. So if it's an actor, have you ever wanted to act for a living, et cetera, et cetera. I've talked to a lot of actors who say they don't, and I always wonder about their sincerity. But I've even, spoken to actors in small acting community in Eugene who have had opportunities and turned them down. And because they think, and I've heard this from musicians as well, they think it's going to ruin it for them. If it's work, then, it won't be any fun anymore. I don't think that way, but some people do. It would be great if bikes could talk to people. This is not really a question. I don't know why it's in my questionnaire, but wouldn't it be awesome if bikes could tell people when they're doing something stupid? If there was an app for that. Hey, dude, there's a car. Don't do that. What? Get out of there. Stop going the wrong way. This is a one-way street. What are you doing? 10 best reasons to come on my podcast. I couldn't list that. I don't imagine a guest could. Number one reason, because it's destined to be the biggest podcast in all of the universe. Is employee training harassment? I'm just going to leave that there. How long can you go without, and then question mark. So again, that'll depend on the guest. How long can you go without chocolate is a good one. Yeah. Do you believe in talent? Do you believe in talent? I've heard some very talented people saying they didn't believe in talent. And it sort of irks me a little bit, because it's easier to say, coming from someone who has a boatload of it. I believe that there are people, I believe everyone's probably got a talent of some sort or another. Maybe someone's talent is keeping their house very clean. Maybe someone's talent is, putting out spiders without hurting them. But when they have a talent that everyone recognizes, I don't know, it just irks me a little bit that they don't acknowledge it, or they don't think it's talent. But it's an interesting word, and it'll be fun to hear other people's opinions on that. So that's about as far as I'm going to take it, because my whole plan for this podcast completely fell apart. However, I think I still will put it up. So thank you for listening. Were you still talking? And I guess I'm not going to be talking for much longer. I'm gonna wrap it up here. I'm gonna let it go. Be kind to each other.